Had a great time tonight. Hannah. For a second, Olivia just stared at the screen, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. Her best friend, her husband, a heart emoji. Her pulse spiked, and a slow, burning heat crawled up her spine. No, this couldn't be happening. Hands shaking, she scrolled up, but that was the only message. Just that single sentence, simple, innocent to anyone else, but to Olivia, it was a nuclear bomb. Slamming the phone onto the counter, she grabbed a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water, and took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. She told herself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe... The front door swung open. Ethan stepped inside, relaxed, casual, his gym bag slung over his shoulder. His hair was slightly damp, his skin still warm from exertion, and worst of all, he was smiling. Something inside Olivia snapped. "Are you fucking kidding me?" she exploded, her voice reverberating through the house. "Hannah? My best friend?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, setting his bag down with an almost lazy motion before turning to face her fully. "Nice to see you too, Olivia," he said smoothly. Her chest was heaving, her fists clenched at her sides. "Don't you fling and play games with me, Ethan. I saw the message. Had a great time tonight? A flingin' heart emoji?" Ethan leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked amused. "You wanted an open marriage," he said, smirking. "I'm just following your rules." Olivia's vision went red. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be waiting for her, always there, always hers. "This is different, and you fucking know it." "Different how?" Ethan tilted his head slightly. "You've been sleeping with Scott for months. You told me this is how modern relationships work, remember? No one gets jealous, no one gets upset. Just honesty." "This isn't honesty," Olivia spat. "This is you trying to get back at me." Ethan pushed off the counter, stepping closer, his presence towering over her now in a way that made her feel small. "You really think this is about you?" he asked, his voice calm, cold. "You think I spent months watching you walk all over me, listening to you laugh behind my back, and now every decision I make is somehow about getting even with you?" He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "No, Olivia, you stopped being the center of my world a long time ago. You just never noticed." Her breath hitched, her mind racing for something to say, some way to turn this around, but for the first time she had nothing, because for the first time she realized Ethan had already let her go. The next few days, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about it. She had expected Ethan to be angry, to lash out, to throw accusations the way any betrayed husband would. But he hadn't. He had looked at her like she was nothing more than an old memory, a closed chapter in his life. That terrified her more than anything. For years, she had been so sure of her place in his life. No matter what she did, no matter how far she pushed, Ethan had always been there, steady and reliable. She had thought she could have it all. Her exciting affair, her stable marriage, her family, her security. But now, for the first time, she could feel it slipping. She wasn't about to let that happen. That night, she took extra time getting ready. She wore the red dress she knew he used to love, the one that hugged her curves in all the right places. She did her makeup, let her hair fall in soft waves around her shoulders. She studied herself in the mirror, forcing confidence she wasn't sure she felt. This would work. It had to. When Ethan came home, she was waiting for him in the kitchen, a glass of wine in her hand, her body leaning just enough to accentuate her figure. She watched him walk in, expecting the usual glance, the flicker of interest, but he didn't even pause. He set his keys on the counter and walked past her like she wasn't even there. Annoyance flared in her chest. "Ethan," she purred, stepping into his path. He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "What?" She smiled, stepping closer, fingers grazing the fabric of his shirt. "I feel like we've been distant lately," she murmured, tilting her head. "Maybe we should fix that." Ethan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You're unbelievable." Her smile faltered. "Come on, don't be like that," she whispered, pressing herself against him, hands sliding up his chest. "We don't have to talk, just come to bed." Ethan grabbed her wrists, gently but firmly, and stepped back. His eyes locked onto hers, cold and resolute. "I'm not your backup plan, Olivia." Her breath caught. "I'm not the guy you come running back to when things don't go your way. he continued, his voice steady, emotionless. You made your choice. Live with it. She stared at him, her heart hammering. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be weak, to give in, to remind himself of what he had and beg her to stay. But instead, he just walked past her, leaving her standing there, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Jack. Olivia gripped her phone so tightly her fingers ached, rage boiling beneath her skin as she scrolled through Hannah's contact. The betrayal, the humiliation, it was too much. She had spent years trusting Hannah, confiding in her, believing she was a friend, and now she was sleeping with Ethan, taking what was hers. The phone barely rang before Hannah picked up. Hey, Olivia. You bitch, Olivia exploded, pacing the kitchen, her breath coming fast and uneven. How could you? How could you? There was a beat of silence before Hannah responded, her voice calm, almost pitying. I figured this was coming. You figured this was coming? Olivia shrieked. You're supposed to be my best friend, and you're screwing my husband? What the fuck is wrong with you? Hannah sighed. Your ex-husband, Olivia, and don't pretend you didn't start this. Olivia felt like she had been slapped. What? Don't turn this on me, you stabbed me in the back. You really don't get it, do you? Hannah's voice sharpened. You're mad because for once, you're not in control. You spent months parading around with Scott, treating Ethan like an afterthought, acting like he'd just sit around and wait for you forever. But guess what? He moved on, and now you can't stand it. Olivia's stomach twisted with something dangerously close to fear. Didn't think he would, actually. You didn't think he would what? Hannah cut in. Realize he deserves better? Before Olivia could answer, she heard the front door open. She turned, gripping the phone harder as Ethan stepped inside, dropping his keys onto the counter. He looked up, locking eyes with her, and in that moment, something inside her snapped. You think this is funny? She yelled, throwing her phone onto the counter with a loud clatter. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What are we talking about now? You and Hannah, she spat. You're screwing my best friend Ethan. Do you have any idea how fecked up that is? And then, to her absolute horror, Ethan laughed. A low, quiet chuckle at first, but then it grew, shaking his shoulders as he shook his head in disbelief. You seriously don't hear yourself, do you? He said, still grinning. You cheated first. You made the rules. Now you hate them? This is different, Olivia snapped, her face hot. It's her. Ethan's smirk didn't waver. Yeah, and for months it was Scott for you. I was supposed to accept it, right? Be understanding, get over my old-fashioned views? He stepped closer, his presence towering over her. So why can't you? Olivia's throat tightened, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to fight, to say something that would turn the situation back in her favor, but she couldn't, because deep down, she knew he was right. And for the first time, she realized she was losing. Ethan took a slow, deliberate step closer, watching Olivia's chest rise and fall in uneven breaths, her eyes darting between him and his infuriatingly calm expression. She wanted a fight. She wanted him to lose control, to scream, to break, to prove to her that she still had power over him. But Ethan wasn't that man anymore. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and with a single tap, the living room filled with the sound of Olivia's own voice. Ethan's too weak to leave me. He'll never do it. He's predictable, he's safe. I get to have my fun, and he'll always be there waiting. Her face drained of color. The recording kept playing, her voice laughing, whispering to Scott about how easy it was to walk all over her husband, about how she could do whatever she wanted and he would just take it. Ethan tilted his head, watching her closely. Still think I'm weak, Olivia? She took a shaky step back, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. He smirked. Let's see how Scott feels about all this, shall we? Before she could react, he scrolled through his contacts, found her lover's wife, and pressed send. Olivier lurched forward, reaching for his phone. Ethan, no! But it was too late. The message was sent, a simple text, along with the recording. Ethan stepped around her, moving to the kitchen, grabbing a beer from the fridge as if nothing had happened. He cracked it open, taking a slow sip while Olivia stood frozen in the middle of the living room, her hands trembling as she stared at his phone, willing it to undo what had just been done. And then her own phone rang. "Scott?" Ethan turned, leaning against the counter, watching with quiet amusement as Olivia hesitated, her breath shallow. When she didn't answer right away, the phone rang again. "Better pick up," Ethan said smoothly. "Wouldn't want him to think you're the one sneaking around on him." Hands shaking, Olivia swiped to accept the call and slowly brought the phone to her ear. "Scott?" "You ruined my life." Scott's voice exploded through the speaker so loudly that even Ethan could hear it. Olivia flinched. "No, my wife threw me out. My kids won't even look at me. You," his voice cracked, a mixture of rage and panic. "You said he'd never do anything. You said he was pathetic." Ethan raised his beer in mock salute. "I lost everything, Olivia, everything. And you?" A harsh intake of breath. "You're on your own." The call cut off. Olivia stood there, the phone slipping from her fingers and landing on the floor with a dull thud. Her legs buckled and she sank down beside it, her arms wrapping around herself as if she could hold her world together through sheer force of will. Ethan took another sip, then walked past her, stepping over her collapsed form like she was nothing more than an obstacle in his path. He paused just long enough to glance down. "Looks like you finally got what you wanted," he said. "You're free." And with that, he left her there, sobbing on the floor, her entire life reduced to rubble. Olivia sat on the floor for what felt like hours, her mind spinning, her body numb. The weight of everything crushed her. Scott was gone, her affair exposed, her perfect little arrangement crumbling into dust. But the worst part wasn't losing Scott. The worst part was the look on Ethan's face when he walked past her, the way he barely acknowledged her, the way he didn't care. That was what terrified her the most. She wiped at her tear-streaked face, forcing herself up on unsteady legs. No, this couldn't be it. She had overplayed her hand, but she could fix it. She had to. Taking a deep breath, she walked down the hall, her feet dragging, heart pounding. She hesitated outside Ethan's door. He was inside, probably working on his laptop, doing what he always did, keeping everything together. She used to find that reliability comforting. Now it felt like the only thing left in her life that made sense. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Ethan was sitting at his desk, his back to her, scrolling through something on his screen. He didn't turn around when she entered. She swallowed, stepping forward. "Ethan?" Her voice was soft, fragile, a stark contrast to the confidence she had carried all these months. "Nothing." She tried again, a little stronger this time. "Ethan, please, we need to talk." Still, he didn't look at her. "There's nothing to talk about." Her chest tightened. "Yes, there is. I know I messed up. I wasn't thinking. I got caught up in something stupid. But we can fix this. We can—" Ethan finally turned, his eyes sharp, unreadable. "Fix what, Olivia?" She stepped closer, her hands trembling. "Us." A bitter smirk pulled at his lips. "Us?" She nodded quickly, hope sparking in her chest. "Yes, I'll stop seeing him. I'll cut him out completely. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want things to go back to the way they were." Ethan exhaled slowly, shaking his head as he stood up, towering over her. The way they were, his voice was quiet, but there was something lethal underneath it. "You mean back when you laughed about me behind my back? Back when you told Scott I was weak? Back when you treated me like a doormat while you slept with another man?" Olivia flinched. "I didn't mean any of that. I was stupid. I didn't think I would—" "What?" Ethan stepped closer, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Huh? Didn't think I would find out? Didn't think I would do anything?" He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "No, Olivia. You didn't want me. You wanted control. And now you have nothing." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "That's not true," she whispered. "I love you." Ethan studied her for a long moment, and for the briefest second she thought maybe he would believe her. Then he turned away. "Go to bed, Olivia." And just like that, she knew. It was over. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and indifferent to the chaos unfolding inside it. Olivia sat stiffly at her table, her lawyer whispering hurried instructions in her ear, but she wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on Ethan, who sat across from her, calm, composed, unmoved. It wasn't fair. This was supposed to be her victory. The system was supposed to protect her, wasn't it? Weren't mothers supposed to have the advantage? But Ethan had played the long game, and he had played it perfectly. The judge cleared his throat, flipping through the documents before looking at both of them. Based on the evidence provided and the testimonies reviewed, I am ruling in favor of the petitioner, Mr. Ethan Carter, for primary custody of the children. Ms. Olivia Carter will retain visitation rights as outlined in the custody agreement. The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the table, her nails digging into the wood. "What?" she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her lawyer stiffened beside her, already knowing this was coming. Ethan's legal team had been ruthless, methodical, leaving nothing to chance. The judge continued, unfazed by Olivia's disbelief. Furthermore, due to the stability of the home environment provided by Mr. Carter and the financial documentation presented, the family residence will remain under his ownership. Ms. Carter will be required to vacate the premises within 60 days. Olivia's entire body went numb. Ethan didn't react, didn't gloat, didn't even smile. He simply nodded, accepting the decision as if he had known all along this was how it would end. She couldn't process it. She had walked into this courtroom thinking she would win, thinking she would get the house, get primary custody, and force Ethan to pay for the life she had so carelessly dismantled. But now she was losing everything. Her children, her home, the life she had built. She turned to Ethan, desperate, her voice breaking. "Ethan, please, you don't have to do this." He finally looked at her then, his gaze steady, unreadable. "I didn't do this, Olivia. You did." The judge finished signing the paperwork, and just like that, it was over. Olivia sat frozen as people shuffled around her, papers exchanged, hands shaken, but she couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket. He didn't spare her another glance as he turned and walked out of the courtroom. And for the first time, Olivia realized she was truly, completely alone. The sun dipped low over the lake, casting golden reflections across the rippling water as laughter echoed through the campsite. Ethan sat by the fire, his arm draped casually around Hannah's shoulders as they watched Lily and Sophie chase Maddie, Hannah's 6-year-old son, through the tall grass. The kids were giggling, their carefree energy filling the air, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt a deep, undeniable sense of peace. This was what life was supposed to feel like. Hannah leaned into him, her warmth familiar now, comforting in a way that didn't come with conditions or expectations. She wasn't playing games, she wasn't trying to control him, she wasn't using love as a bargaining chip. She was simply there, present, genuine, real. "You're thinking too much again," she teased, nudging him gently. Ethan smirked, shaking his head. "Old habit." She laced her fingers through his, squeezing lightly. "You don't have to look over your shoulder anymore, you know. This is yours." He exhaled, glancing at the kids, at the way they thrived in this new life. No tension, no forced smiles, no walking on eggshells, just happiness. Lily ran up to him, breathless and grinning. "Dad, can we go fishing in the morning? Hannah said she'd show us how to catch the big ones." Ethan ruffled her hair, chuckling, "Of course, but if she outfishes me, we're never speaking of it again." Hannah laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, it will happen. Prepare yourself." Sophie climbed into Ethan's lap, snuggling against him, her voice soft. "I like it when we're all together like this." Ethan's chest tightened, his heart swelling at the quiet truth in her words. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, meeting Hannah's gaze over the firelight. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice steady, certain. "Me too." Olivia sat in her small, dimly lit apartment, staring blankly at the unpaid bills scattered across her kitchen table. The place was nothing like the home she had once shared with Ethan. Tiny, lifeless, barely furnished beyond the essentials. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She was supposed to win. She was supposed to have the house, the kids, the security. Instead, she had nothing. Her phone buzzed. For a fleeting second, she hoped it was Lily or Sophie, but when she looked at the screen, disappointment settled deep in her chest. Just another payment reminder. She sighed, rubbing her temples, exhaustion creeping into her bones. Since the divorce, everything had spiraled. She had underestimated how much she had relied on Ethan, not just financially, but in ways she never even realized. He had handled everything, from the mortgage to the kids' schedules to the little unspoken responsibilities that kept life running smoothly. Without him, everything felt like an uphill battle. And Scott? Gone. He had moved on the second his life crumbled, blaming her for his downfall. He was never going to be a real partner. He was just a thrill, a fantasy she had chased until it ruined everything. She swallowed down the bitterness as she pulled on a jacket, needing to get out of the suffocating silence of her apartment. The cold air stung her cheeks as she walked through the park near her old neighborhood, lost in thought, lost in regret. Then she saw them. Ethan, Hannah, and the kids. They were walking down the trail together, Lily swinging between them as they laughed. Sophie was holding Hannah's hand, chatting animatedly about something, and Maddie was running ahead, his excitement infectious. Olivia's stomach twisted violently. Ethan looked happy, not just content, not just existing, happy. And it wasn't forced, it wasn't for show. It was real, undeniable. Her daughters didn't look like they missed her. They didn't look like they were struggling. They looked better, brighter, more carefree than she had ever seen them. And Hannah had taken the place Olivia once held without hesitation. Olivia clenched her fists, her breath shallow, her throat tight. She wanted to march over to say something to remind them that she was still their mother, that she still mattered. But as she watched Ethan lean down, kissing the top of Sophie's head, and as Hannah whispered something to Lily that made her burst into laughter, a sickening realization settled over Olivia like a weight she couldn't lift. They didn't need her anymore. And worst of all, she had done this to herself. Olivia stood frozen, watching the life she had thrown away play out in front of her, untouched by the destruction she had caused. Ethan had moved on, rebuilt himself, and created something even stronger than before. He hadn't just survived, he had thrived, and now she was nothing more than a distant memory, a mistake that had cost her everything. But what do you think? Did Ethan do the right thing by staying in the marriage long enough to turn the tables, ensuring he walked away with everything? Or should he have left immediately, even if it meant losing custody of his daughters, his home, and his stability? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Would you have handled it the same way, or would you have taken a different path? One thing is certain. Olivia thought she was in control, but she never realized the real power was never hers to begin with. Because that's the truth about betrayal. Cheaters always believe they're the ones in control. They think they can manipulate, deceive, and still have a safety net waiting when things fall apart. But when the person they betrayed stops playing the game, when the one they thought they could break turns out to be stronger than they ever imagined, that's when reality hits. Olivia thought she was winning until she realized the game was already over. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to stand up for yourself after being betrayed or underestimated? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales of resilience, redemption, and justice. Every action you take helps bring more awareness to the power of standing up for yourself and refusing to be anyone's doormat. Together we can prove that self-worth isn't defined by how others treat us, it's defined by how we rise after being knocked down. Ethan sat in stunned silence as Olivia's words echoed through the dimly lit kitchen. An open marriage. We can still be happy, Ethan, just in a new way. He stared at her, struggling to recognize the woman he had built his life with. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She wasn't remorseful. No, she was offering him a deal, as if their marriage was a business transaction she could restructure at will. His stomach churned, his jaw clenched. You want to sleep with other men and have me sit here, playing the role of the devoted husband? His voice was low, dangerously calm. She exhaled, as if he was the one being unreasonable. It's not about sleeping with other people, Ethan. It's about freedom. Relationships evolve. He let out a bitter chuckle. Is that what you told Scott before you climbed into bed with him? Her eyes widened for just a second before she masked it with feigned indifference. This doesn't have to be ugly, she said. You could enjoy this too. You could explore. Ethan leaned forward, his voice like steel. Fine. Olivia blinked. What? You want an open marriage? You got it. He grabbed his phone, tapped a few times, and then slid it across the counter. The screen was still glowing. A message opened for Olivia to read. Had a great time tonight. Can't wait to see you again. Sent to Hannah, her best friend. Olivia's face twisted. The casual confidence, the self-righteous I'm in control attitude evaporated in an instant. You're... Her voice faltered. You're seeing Hannah? Ethan leaned back, a smirk playing at his lips. You said we should explore. Olivia's hands curled into fists. This is different. Why? Ethan tilted his head, enjoying the way her composure cracked. Because now you're the one losing? For the first time, Olivia realized she had never been in control at all. But before we dive deeper into this story, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, and if you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. Ethan, at 38, had built the kind of life many men dreamed of: a successful career as a software engineer, a beautiful home in the suburbs of Seattle, and most importantly, a family he cherished. His wife, Olivia, was 36, a talented and ambitious marketing director who had always been the vibrant, adventurous soul of their relationship. Where Ethan was steady, reliable, and deeply committed to the values of loyalty and family, Olivia was the spark, the one who thrived on excitement, social gatherings, and spontaneity. It had been this contrast that drew them together years ago, his quiet strength balancing out her boundless energy. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, financially stable, socially respected, and effortlessly in sync. Their two daughters, 10-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Sophie, were the center of Ethan's universe. He had spent years making sure they had a childhood filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures. Olivia, though busy with her career, had always been a loving mother, the kind who planned extravagant birthday parties and made sure the girls had the best of everything. Together, they had built a life that seemed unshakable, the kind of marriage that others admired, but perfection is often an illusion, a carefully curated facade that hides cracks beneath the surface. Ethan had always believed that love, trust, and commitment were enough to keep a marriage strong, but he was about to learn that sometimes the person you trust the most is the one who can shatter your world in an instant. It started with something small, something that shouldn't have meant anything, but did. Olivia had been distant for weeks, always glued to her phone, laughing at messages she never shared, keeping it close like a secret she didn't want him to see. Ethan wasn't the jealous type. He had never been the kind of man to check his wife's phone or question her every move. But something felt off. It wasn't just the secrecy, it was the way she looked at him now, detached, as if he were just another part of the house, another routine she had long since grown tired of. That night she had fallen asleep early, her phone buzzing softly on the nightstand. Ethan hesitated. He told himself he shouldn't, that he should just roll over and go to sleep. But something dark and insistent clawed at his chest. His gut told him the truth was right there, waiting. He picked up the phone, his hands slightly unsteady, and opened her messages. The first few lines hit him like a gut punch. You're the only one who makes me feel alive. I hate sneaking around, but it's the only way I can be happy. He's so predictable, he'll never leave me. The words blurred for a second as Ethan tried to steady his breathing, his heart hammered against his ribs, his vision tunneling as reality twisted around him. His wife, the woman he had loved, the mother of his children, was mocking him, speaking to another man in ways she hadn't spoken to him in years. His hands tightened around the phone as he scrolled further. Photos, plans, a secret life playing out in private messages while he had been sleeping next to her, believing they were still a team. Scott, the name made his blood run cold. He knew him, a co-worker, someone Olivia had mentioned in passing, always laughing at his jokes, always just a little too interested in what he had to say. Ethan had thought nothing of it. He had trusted her. He sat there for a long time, staring at the glowing screen, his entire body rigid with a mixture of rage, humiliation, and disbelief. He could hear her slow, even breaths beside him, completely unaware that her world was about to shatter just as she had shattered his. The next morning, Ethan waited. He let her go about her routine, watching her closely. She hummed as she made coffee, kissed Lily and Sophie on the forehead, checked her phone with a small, secretive smile. Who's Scott? Ethan asked, his voice eerily calm. Olivia stiffened for just a fraction of a second before turning to him, her expression carefully neutral. What? Ethan held up her phone. He had left the messages open. He watched the color drain from her face, her eyes darting to the screen, processing just how much he had seen. For a moment he expected panic, regret, apologies. But Olivia just sighed, rubbing her temple as if she were exhausted by the conversation already. You went through my phone? She asked instead, her tone accusing, like he was the one who had broken some unspoken rule. Ethan laughed bitterly. That's what you have to say? She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. Look, Ethan, I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I was going to talk to you about it. Talk to me about what? How you've been sleeping with another man while I've been here taking care of our kids? How you've been laughing about me behind my back? Olivia exhaled slowly, and when she spoke again there wasn't an ounce of remorse in her voice. I still love you, Ethan, I do, but I need more than this. He stared at her, struggling to comprehend the words. More? Her expression softened, like she was trying to explain something simple to a child. We can still be happy, Ethan, just in a new way. His stomach twisted. A new way? She nodded, stepping closer as if she actually believed he'd entertain what she was about to say. An open marriage, no secrets, no sneaking around, just honesty. I'm not saying we have to end what we have. I just need some space to explore, and you can too. His jaw clenched so hard it ached. You think this is some kind of business arrangement? He tilted her head. Marriage evolves, Ethan. We don't have to be stuck in old-fashioned ideas. This could work. He had never felt so sick in his life. She wasn't sorry, she wasn't ashamed. She was standing there, completely unfazed, acting like they were discussing a real estate investment, not the destruction of their family. Ethan looked at the woman he had built a life with, the woman he had trusted with everything, and realized he didn't know her at all. Ethan sat in the sleek, sterile office of the divorce attorney, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. The walls were lined with certificates and legal books, a reminder that he was now in a world where love and commitment meant nothing, only laws and loopholes mattered. Across from him, Marissa Langley, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 40s, adjusted her glasses and folded her hands on the desk. Tell me everything, she said. Ethan exhaled, his jaw tight. My wife is having an affair. She wants an open marriage. I don't. I want out. Marissa barely blinked. She had heard it all before. And you have kids? 2 daughters, Lily's 10, Sophie's 7. They're everything to me, Ethan said, his voice cracking slightly. Marissa sighed and leaned forward. Ethan, I'm going to be blunt. If you file for divorce, Olivia will likely get primary custody. His stomach dropped. What? Why? Family courts, especially here in Washington, tend to favor the mother unless she's proven unfit. And infidelity? It doesn't factor in as much as you think. Legally, it won't affect her standing as a parent. Ethan shook his head, his pulse pounding. But I'm the one who's been home with them more. I take them to school. I help with homework. Olivia is the one sneaking off to be with another man. Marissa gave him a sympathetic look. That may be true, but unless she's neglecting them outright or endangering them, the court will lean in her favor. At best, you'll get joint custody. But realistically, you'll probably see them every other weekend and for a few weeks during the summer. Ethan's grip tightened on the arms of the chair. So, I lose my family? He hesitated. Not necessarily, but it's an uphill battle. He swallowed hard, trying to push down the rage threatening to boil over. Okay, what about the house? Maurice's expression remained neutral. If you initiate the divorce, Olivia has a strong claim to stay in the house, especially since she has primary custody of the kids. The court prioritizes stability for children, meaning they'll want to keep them in the family home. She'll argue that uprooting them would be harmful. Ethan's head spun. So she gets the kids and the house? Marissa nodded. And half of your assets, retirement funds, savings, possibly even a portion of your income in the form of spousal support, depending on the financial situation. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Ethan had worked his entire life to build security for his family, only to realize that if he walked away, he'd be starting over from nothing, except for the privilege of writing Olivia a check every month while she played house with another man. Marissa studied him carefully. Look, Ethan, I know this isn't what you want to hear, But I need you to understand the reality. If you fight for full custody, you'll need solid evidence proving she's unfit. If you want to keep the house, you'll need to make financial sacrifices. If you want to win, you have to be strategic. This isn't just about feelings. This is war. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, trying to center himself. Everything inside him screamed to walk away, to burn it all down and never look back. But then he thought of Lily and Sophie, their laughter, their little hands reaching for him in the mornings, their sleepy voices calling him daddy. He couldn't let Olivia take them away from him. His jaw tightened as he opened his eyes, meeting Marissa's steady gaze. Then tell me how to fight. Ethan walked into the house that night with a clarity he hadn't felt in weeks. His mind was no longer clouded with heartbreak, no longer drowning in the betrayal that had consumed him. He had spent the last few hours with Marissa, listening to the cold, harsh reality of what would happen if he left, and for the first time he saw everything for what it was. Olivia had already made her choice. She had chosen Scott. She had chosen to destroy the life they had built, but she hadn't expected him to play by her rules. As he stepped inside, Olivia was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. "Hey," she said as if nothing had changed, as if she hadn't just shattered everything he believed in. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked straight to their bedroom, stripped the wedding band from his finger, and set it down on the dresser with a quiet finality. The metal felt cold against his skin, a dead weight that no longer meant anything. He grabbed Olivia's clothes from the closet, the ones she still neatly hung next to his as if she were still his wife in any meaningful way, and started moving them into the guest room. When he was done, he stood in the doorway, staring at the hollow shell of the space they had once shared. This wasn't their bedroom anymore. It wasn't a place of love, trust, or intimacy. It was just a room, just walls and furniture, nothing more. He walked back down the hall, his footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor, and found Olivia still on the couch, legs curled under her, eyes locked on the glowing screen of her phone. "Your stuff is in the guest room," he said, his voice flat, controlled. She blinked up at him, confused for a second, then let out a breathy, almost amused laugh. "Seriously?" Ethan didn't react. "You want your space? You've got it." For the first time, she put her phone down, tilting her head as she studied him. There was no guilt in her expression, no shame, just mild curiosity. "Ethan, I told you, I still love you. This doesn't have to be weird." He let out a sharp, humorless chuckle. "You think this is normal?" She sighed, stretching her arms above her head like they were discussing something as mundane as dinner plans. "A lot of couples make this work. It's about honesty. We don't have to throw everything away." He stared at her, trying to see the woman he had married, the woman he had once loved so completely. But she was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone selfish. Someone who saw him as nothing more than an accessory to her life, a convenience she wasn't ready to part with. Without another word, he turned and walked away. He wasn't going to argue with her. He wasn't going to plead or beg or demand an apology she would never mean. She had already lost him, and she didn't even realize it yet. The days blurred together after that. Ethan stopped trying. He stopped making conversation, stopped waiting for her to come home at a reasonable hour, stopped caring when she slipped into the house smelling like someone else's cologne. He kept himself busy. Work, gym, time with the girls. When Olivia was home, they existed like strangers under the same roof, passing by each other like ghosts. The first time he left the house without his wedding ring, he expected her to notice. She didn't. The first time he took Lily and Sophie out for a weekend trip without telling Olivia where they were going, she barely glanced up from her phone when they got back. She didn't care. Not yet. Ethan woke up before dawn, the house silent except for the occasional creak of the walls settling. He had spent too many nights lying awake, letting anger and betrayal eat at him, but not anymore. He wasn't going to let Olivia's choices define him. He wasn't going to be the man she expected him to be, the one who stayed broken, the one who accepted being second place in his own marriage. He had made his decision. If she wanted her freedom, she could have it, but she would no longer have him as her safety net. He laced up his running shoes, stepped outside into the crisp morning air, and started running. The first mile burned, his body resisting the change, but he pushed through. By the second mile, his breathing steadied. By the third, his mind was clear. This was what he needed. Something that belonged to him. something Olivia had no control over. Every morning, before the rest of the world woke up, he ran. The exhaustion felt good, grounding. The ache in his muscles reminded him that he was changing, becoming something stronger, something Olivia would no longer recognize. He adjusted his diet, cut out the processed junk, focused on building himself back up. The weight started dropping, his muscles growing leaner, more defined. Co-workers noticed first, throwing casual compliments his way. Then strangers, women at the gym, a barista at his usual coffee shop, even other parents at Lily and Sophie's school. He caught their lingering looks, their smiles, their subtle interest. It was a strange feeling, realizing that for the first time in years, he was being seen. Olivia hadn't noticed yet, but she would. It wasn't just his body that was changing. He had spent weeks researching, planning. If he was going to lose his house eventually, he wanted something that was his. He walked into the dealership, ran his fingers over the sleek surface of the truck he had picked out, imagined the places it could take him. When the salesman handed him the keys, he didn't feel hesitation or doubt, only excitement. He drove it home, parked it in the driveway, and let it sit there like a declaration. Olivia barely glanced at it when she came home that night, tossing her bag onto the counter. "Whose truck is that?" she asked. "Mine," Ethan said simply, pouring himself a drink. She frowned slightly, as if she were trying to figure out why he would need something like that. Then she shrugged and went back to her phone. A week later, the RV arrived. Ethan watched as the girls squealed with excitement, running inside to explore the bunk beds, the little dining area, the cabinets they immediately filled with their favorite snacks. They were already talking about trips, places they wanted to see, memories they wanted to make. Ethan smiled, soaking it all in. This was what mattered. That weekend, he took them on their first trip, just the three of them. They roasted marshmallows under the stars, hiked through winding trails, laughed until their stomachs hurt. When they got back, Olivia was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as usual. She barely acknowledged them at first, but then Lily ran up to her, talking excitedly about everything they had done. Olivia's expression faltered slightly as she listened, her grip on her phone tightening. Ethan watched her carefully, waiting for her to realize she was no longer the center of his world, waiting for her to understand that she was becoming nothing more than a spectator in the life she had once shared with him. She didn't say much that night, but as Ethan walked past her on his way to the kitchen, he caught the way she looked at him. Just for a second, just long enough for him to know. She had noticed, and for the first time, she cared. Olivia had expected Ethan to crumble. She had expected anger, tears, desperation, anything but this. She had been so sure of her place in his life, so confident that no matter what she did, he would always be there, waiting for her, orbiting around her like he always had. But now, as she watched him from across the room, something felt off. Ethan didn't look like a man who was falling apart. He looked better than he had in years. His shoulders were broader, his jawline sharper, his presence different. Stronger, more self-assured. He carried himself with a confidence she hadn't seen in him since their early years together. He had stopped waiting for her, stopped looking at her like she was the center of his world. And for the first time, Olivia felt something she hadn't expected. Unease. She started noticing little things first. The way he left the house early in the morning, coming back with his shirt damp with sweat, muscles flexing under the fabric as he ran a towel through his hair. The way women at the grocery store gave him second glances, lingering smiles, small gestures of interest. And Ethan? He noticed too, but he didn't seem surprised. He didn't shrink back or act oblivious like he once might have. He met their eyes, gave polite nods, even smiled back sometimes. Olivia told herself it didn't bother her, but it did. Then there was the time they ran into an old acquaintance at a school event. Ethan had been talking with another dad when a woman Olivia vaguely recognized from the PTA walked up, placing a hand on his arm as she laughed at something he said. Olivia had expected Ethan to flinch, to awkwardly step away, but he didn't. He smiled, leaned in slightly, kept the conversation going with an ease that sent an unfamiliar, unpleasant heat curling in Olivia's stomach. She had never seen him like this before. Then came the shift in their daughters. Olivia had always been the fun parent, the one they clung to when they needed something, the one they looked to for excitement. But now they ran to Ethan first. Now they talked about their weekend trips with a kind of excitement that made her feel like an outsider in her own home. One night, she walked into the living room to find Lily curled up against Ethan on the couch, her little voice animated as she told him about a new book she had started reading. Sophie was on the floor, sketching something, occasionally glancing up at Ethan for approval. They were comfortable with him in a way that made Olivia's throat tighten. Later that night, she climbed into bed and glanced at the empty space beside her. Ethan hadn't slept next to her in months. At first, she hadn't cared. It had been her choice after all. But now, lying there alone, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of him moving around in his own room down the hall. He wasn't miserable, he wasn't hurting, he wasn't lost without her. He was happy. Just not with her. Ethan hadn't planned on meeting anyone. That part of his life felt distant, almost irrelevant. Women were noticing him now, sure, but he hadn't been looking back. Until Hannah. It started at the cycling club, something he had joined to keep himself busy, to push his limits beyond the morning runs that had become second nature. The first time he really noticed her, she was adjusting her helmet near the bike racks, her dark hair pulled into a ponytail, toned arms flexing as she tightened the strap. "You ready for this ride, or are you just here for the social hour?" she teased, flashing him a grin. Ethan smirked, adjusting his own gear. "Depends. You planning to keep up?" Hannah laughed, a genuine rich sound, before hopping onto her bike and kicking off. They rode side by side for miles, exchanging playful jabs, matching each other's pace with an unspoken challenge. She was different from Olivia in every way that mattered. Grounded, self-sufficient, present. There was no constant checking of her phone, no veiled condescension, no looking past him like he was just a fixture in the background. They started riding together often, grabbing coffee after long trails, stretching out in the grass while talking about everything and nothing. She had been divorced for 3 years, a single mother to a 6-year-old son, and unlike Olivia, she didn't seem to carry a sense of entitlement about relationships. "I learned the hard way that love isn't about keeping someone around just because it's convenient," she admitted one evening as they cooled down after a long ride. "If you don't value what you have, you lose it." Ethan nodded, staring out at the horizon. "Yeah, some people don't realize that until it's too late." The first time she touched him, it was casual, just a hand on his arm, when she laughed at one of his dry remarks. But the warmth lingered longer than it should have. The first time they went to dinner, it wasn't planned. They had finished a long ride, and she suggested grabbing something to eat. It wasn't a date, but by the time the meal ended and he found himself watching the way she tucked her hair behind her ear while she talked, something shifted. For the first time in a long time, he felt awake, he felt wanted, he felt like himself again. Olivia stumbled through the front door, tossing her keys onto the counter and kicking off her heels. It was late, later than usual, but she didn't care. Scott had been in one of his moods again, distant, restless. He was fine for what he was, a distraction, but lately she could feel the distance growing, the once thrilling affair becoming something far less exciting. She had expected to come home and find Ethan asleep in his usual spot, the way he always was, predictable and dependable, but the house was empty. Frowning, she pulled out her phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. Her stomach tightened. Ethan never ignored her calls. Even after everything, he was always available. Annoyed, she opened their shared family calendar to see if he had marked anything down. Nothing. Then, just as she was about to put her phone away, the screen lit up with a message.